Good morning. We are on page 275 in math today, and we are learning something new. I know we've been doing a lot of review the past couple days. Now, this is something kind of new, but not like super new. So don't get all panicked or anything. It's not hard at all. What we are learning is division with decimals. And the reason it's not really new is because all you're doing is just dividing like usual. But you need to know what to do with your decimal point when we divide. So, division with decimals is just normal dividing, but what you do before you do anything is bring your decimal point right up, right above where it's at. You just bring it right up, so you don't move it anywhere, not this way, that way. You just bring it right up above where the decimal point is. So you can do that before you even start dividing and just put it there because you know that that's where the decimal point is going to be. So if I am dividing $1.57, okay, by 2. The first thing I'm going to do, bring my decimal point up. If I'm dividing 0.5 by 1, first thing I'm going to do, bring my decimal point up right where it is. If I'm dividing 0.07 by 1, let's do this. 1.5. My first thing I'm going to do is bring the decimal point right up. So wherever it is, right above it, you just move it right up above it. So that's how you do it with decimal points. So let's go ahead and use our example. So a lot of times decimals are in money when you're dealing with money. And if you want to divide money, okay, so let's say we have $3.57. And I want to divide it 17 ways. So I want to divide it by 17. What I'm going to do is just divide like normal. So I already know how to do division with two numbers here, okay? And so you'd say 1 goes into 3 times, but you already know that it can't be 3 times because 37 is more than 35. So you're going to use a 2 instead. And you start 2 in because you have two numbers in the divisor, you start 2 in. Then you multiply. 2 times 7 is 14. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. 34. You have 1 left over. Bring down your 7. 17 goes into 17 one time. So your answer is 0.21, but don't forget your dollar sign because you're dealing with money. So your answer is, if you want to divide $3.57 17 ways, each person would get 21 cents. Okay, just make sure not to forget your decimal point. If you do not do your decimal point, then it's going to be wrong. Okay, your decimal point is very important. So don't make sure it's really visible, make sure it's really big. I have to be careful to make sure it's big so you can see it on the board. Do that on your paper, okay? Make sure it's plenty big so there's no doubt that it is a decimal point. Okay, so let's go ahead and do one of the other problems together, and then you can do the rest of your page on your own. So let's do our first problem. We're dividing these money problems. Be sure to place the decimal point and dollar sign correctly in the quotient. So you place the decimal point in the quotient directly above the decimal point in the dividend. So you just move it right up, right above it. So we have $39.76. Make sure your decimal point's really big. $39.76. And you want to divide it by 7. Separate it 7 ways. Okay? And then you start dividing like you normally would. You know that 7 can't go into 3, so it's going to go into 39. 7 goes into 39 5 times. And now I see what I forgot. I forgot something. It's the first thing you should do is bring your decimal point right up. Now you can do it at the end if you want to, but it's honestly better just to do it right away. And that's what I should have done right away. So then keep going. 5 times 7 is 35. And now if you want, you can bring your dollar sign right up too because you know that the 5 is going to be there. Okay, 35, 4 left over. Bring down your 7. That leaves you at 47. Okay, 7 times 6 is 42. With 5 left over, bring down the 6. Makes it 56. 7 goes into 56 8 times. with 0 left over. So your answer is, when you write out your answer, make sure you use your dollar signs, your decimal points. Your answer is $5.68, okay? If you're dividing it 7 ways, each person gets $5.68. Don't forget, again, your dollar sign and your decimal point. It's very important. If you don't put it in the correct place, then you are going to make a mistake, and it's going to be wrong. Okay, so if I had moved my decimal point and just put it over here, that means I have $56, which, I mean, I'd prefer to have $56, but that's not the truth. So make sure your decimal point gets put in the right place, right above where it is in your dividend. So you just put it right up above it. So that's how you divide with decimals. It's really easy, nothing complicated about it. Your biggest problem is going to be not to forget to do it, okay? I've seen some of you guys doing it in math and you forget to put your decimal point or you put it in the wrong place, and that makes it wrong. It's important to know that. So when you're doing it with decimals, with your division, you just put it right above wherever it is. You just put it right above that. And you can even do that first so you don't get confused. So go ahead and finish all of page 275. You're going to divide with money. You're dividing with just normal decimal points. It's the same thing. You just move it right up. And then some review with your temperatures. Now on page 277, we are learning about annexing zeros. Now, this is not complicated at all. But when you're annexing zeros when dividing, so the first thing we have to realize is if you have a whole number, let's say I have 30. After every whole number, there is an understood decimal point. So if I put a decimal point here, does that change anything? No, it's still 30. If I put a decimal point in front of the 0, now it's 3. So that changes something. But every number has a decimal point after it. You just don't, it's not always put there. Usually you only put it there if you have something after it. So let's say I had 30 and a half. If I wanted to do that as a decimal, I would do 30.5. And that means I have 30 and a half. But if I have just a whole number, so let's say I just have 30, what I can do is I can add a decimal point and I can add a 0. Now, has that changed how much I have? No, it's still 30. Okay, so think of it in money. So let's say I have $30. I can write $30 just like that. Or if I want to, I can put a decimal point and I can add 0, 0. How much money do I have now? I still have $30. It's the same as if I were writing it like this. So this is $30 and that's $30. So if you add a decimal point, you can add as many zeros as you want to a number without making it wrong. Now, if I had 30, let's say I had $30 and I don't put a decimal point but I add a 0, what does that make that? That makes it 300, so that changes the number. But if all I did was added a decimal point and added a 0, does that change how much money I have? No, it's still just 30. So you can add a 0 after any number if you put a decimal point in front of it. So when you're dividing, okay, let's say, and our example is 30. Let's say we're dividing 30 by 4. Now, a lot of times you are left with a remainder. Up till now, you've learned that if you have a remainder, you make it into a fraction. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this example. Let's read our rule first. To avoid a remainder or a fraction in the quotient, annex zeros after the decimal point of the dividend and continue to divide. All whole numbers have an understood decimal point after the ones place. We already talked about that. So if I'm dividing 30 by 40, all right, so let's go ahead and do it. 40 goes into 30. 4 goes into 30 7 times. 4 times 7 is 28. I have 2 left over. Now, normally you could do this and make it into a fraction. So it would be 7 and 2/4, which you would reduce into 1/2. Okay, and that's how you've been doing up till now. But if you don't want to have a fraction as a remainder, you can do something else instead, and you can just keep dividing till it's gone. What you can do Instead of having that remainder, when you see you have 2 left over, I can add a decimal point here. Now, if I add a decimal point there, I have to put it up here too. Just like we just learned about dividing with decimal points, you just put it right above it, and I can keep going. So I can add a 0 because that still equals 30. I haven't changed anything. So then I can bring the 0 down, and now I have 20. 4 goes into 20 5 times. So now I have 7.5 is my answer, which is the same as 7.5. It's just written out as a decimal. So you can keep adding zeros. If I didn't end, now this here I ended with 0 remainder. So I don't have to keep going. But if I had a remainder, I can keep adding as many zeros as I want to after the whole number, after the decimal point, without changing the problem. And you just keep going until there's no remainder. So let's do a different problem. All right, let's do the first one there. 15 divided by 2. Okay? 2 goes into 15 7 times because 2 times 7 is 14. I have 1 left over. Instead of making a fraction of a remainder, I don't want to have a remainder at all. I just want to keep going until all my numbers are gone. So I can annex, I can put a decimal point here. If I do that here, I need to do it up here. Don't forget to put it up there. If you put it down here, put it up there. Now I can annex a 0, which means I can add a 0. If I can bring that 0 down, 2 goes into 10 5 times, because 2 times 5 equals 10. Now I have 0 remainder, so my answer is 7.5, and I don't have a remainder. So that you can just keep dividing until you don't have a remainder. Now you can add more than 1 0. Let's do a problem where we add more than 1 0. All right, let's go down to number 2, and let's do 2a. Okay, so 2a, that is 37 divided by 4. Okay, so let's do that problem. 4 goes into 36 9 times. So 36 out of 37, you have 1 left over. Instead of doing a remainder, I'm going to add a decimal point here. If I add a decimal point here, I have to add it up here, right above it. And then I can add a 0. And it doesn't change. It's still 37. It's 37.0, which is the same as saying 37. Now I can bring my 0 down. 4 goes into 10. How many times? 4 times 2 is 8. I still have a remainder. I don't want to stop if I have a remainder. I want to keep going. So I add another 0. I can annex another 0. I can bring that down. 4 goes into 20 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. I have 0 left over now. So my answer is 9.25. And I went all the way until there was no remainder left. So that's what you're going to be doing on page 277, adding zeros, annexing zeros when you're dividing. And you just keep on going until you don't have a remainder left. So if you add 2 zeros, 3 zeros, 4 zeros, however many, it doesn't matter. You keep adding it until you don't have a remainder left. All right, so go ahead and do page 277. That's annexing zeros. Do all of that page. If you have any questions, be sure to ask. That's all.